cars just eat your money. I want you to know that. Whether you have a nice Maserati or a broken down Toyota, you'll get to your destination the same time. Hello everybody, welcome to Vibing Out with Texony. I'm your host, Texony, aka Mr. WorldVibe. And what we have here is a community to give local voices a public platform of shared ideas, knowledge, and perspectives. So today's perspective is a Topic Tuesday, and it's a topic that I didn't think would win the polls, but here we are today, and it's about buying a car to finance or to lease. Okay, so we're gonna do three things in this episode. Three things today. Number one, I'm gonna be talking about leasing versus financing, like what those are, what the definitions of each one is, how they differ. I'm gonna secondly talk about the pros and cons of each. Okay, so you'll kind of get a sense as to the difference between them, so you start to figure out which one suits you and your life and what you think would work for you. And then number three, I'm gonna talk about my personal experience, because I'm on my third car, so I know a thing or two just from the way I've owned cars. I'm leasing a car, so like I can go into my life and talk about how it's been through for me. But at the very beginning, I'm going to start with leasing and financing, pros and cons. So if anything else, you understand the definitions, the terms, throw in a little stat or two, so you know for yourself, and then you'll stick through to the end, and you'll hear about my experience. Okay, so thank you for being here. If it's your first time being on the podcast, watching or listening, give this podcast a subscribe on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, however you're listening or watching. If you're here on YouTube, drop a like. It's the least you could do, and it would just show love to those who love you too, right? Show appreciation to those who appreciate you, and I appreciate you for being here. Trust me. So thank you so much. One more thing before we get into this whole podcast here. I love driving, okay? I'm still learning about the inside of cars, but on the outside, like the actual driving, yes, that's something I love so much, okay? I've been driving for 10 plus years. I'm actually a driver examiner at my job at Drive Test, so I know a lot about driving, and I have a page on Instagram called Mindful Driving, where I just promote, I promote safe driving. I give my own perspectives with it. And so follow the page if you want to see some driving tips. If you want to talk driving, we can do that on there. So that's on the driving end. But for now, today we're going to talk about buying a car in the first place. So you might be in, a few positions. You might have a car and be looking to get a new one, or you might not have a car and be looking to get one, maybe your first car, or maybe a new car. So this video, this podcast, I hope it, if nothing else, okay, I hope it inspires you to just think about, the decisions, and I hope it gives you some information, some knowledge, so when that moment comes, you can at least refer back to this episode, or you can think about some of the ideas I talked about here. Maybe that'll influence your buying decision at the end of the day. So that's my intention, just to really give you guys some interesting perspectives with buying and leasing. A few facts, my personal insights. So let's begin. Okay, we're going to start. What is leasing? Okay, let's start with the difference of which one is which and what they mean individually. So leasing is when you buy a car but you don't own it. Okay, so you're paying for the cost of the car for not the whole time you have the car. You only buy it for a term, which means you could buy the car, you could own the car for 3 years, 2 years, 4 years. I even know some car companies do 5 up to probably 6 years. So a lease is like a temporarily owning a car. It's like renting a car for that time being. So what the dealership does is they take a loan from a bank, and you pay the dealership the loan of the bank, and you're paying for the cost of the car in the term that you have it. Okay, so if you have a 4-year lease on a car, you're going to pay the cost of the car in those 4 years. You're not paying, because once you're done with the lease, you give the car back. Sometimes car companies will offer you to buy out the car so you can continue the lease and just finance the car when you're done your lease. So then what's financing? So financing is kind of like the opposite. Instead of renting a car, it's yours. You own it. Okay, so you're paying for the full cost of the car to the dealership. Like, you're paying for the cost of the car. So there's pros and cons of each, and we'll get into that because I have a preference, and I don't want to spoil, which one I think is better. I'm going to save that to the end. I don't want to, influence or, give you any bias as I try to objectively break down the pros and cons, but you might get a sense of which side I'm leaning on towards the end of the conversation here. Let's start with leasing, okay? What are the pros of leasing? So you can typically lease a newer car. That's one of the best things about leasing is it's a newer car, a newer brand, a newer make and model. And when the lease is done, like I said, it's a term. So if it's a 2, 3, 4 year term, when the lease is done, you can get a new car, okay? They say variety is the spice of life, and it's true. In this case, your 4 years is done with your car, whatever your lease, you get a new car. So you're always having new cars, okay? And that's a pro, because who doesn't want a nice new car? Think about it. It's got more safety features. That's safer for you driving, for anyone else that is driving the car. It's also got, maybe it's fuel economy. Maybe it's better and saving gas because it's a newer car. So there you go. There's savings there too. And here's the most important part, okay? It's cheaper. It's about 40% cheaper than financing. So the monthly payment, oftentimes dealerships do, bi-weekly payments, so 2 payments a month. That's going to add up to being sometimes 40% as cheap compared to financing a car. So it's cheaper overall. It is. They also offer a lot of packages when you lease cars. For example, a warranty. Okay, that's pretty much standard, but by the time you're done with the car, the warranty's up. So your car is covered the entire time you have it. I also have this on my car. It's I don't know what it's called, but basically as you own your car for the few years of it being leased, damages sometimes, occur on your car, scrapes, chips here and there. So I have this thing where for $7,000 worth of damage, up to $7,000 worth of damage on the car, they don't charge me. So at the end of the term, when I return my car, if it's $7,000 or less of damage, it's written off. So I don't have to pay for that. So you often get packages and stuff like this. They offer a lot of that on leases. And again, it's cheaper because there's no down payment necessary. Okay, so when you go to sign the papers, they're not gonna advise, or they might advise it, but most times they won't, because it's not gonna change the price of the car or your monthly payments by putting a down payment on like $2,000. You don't really have to. I would really advise against it. I'm watching all these videos as I did before I got my car, and nah, don't pay a down payment when you're leasing a car. So it's cheaper upon paying for it, monthly payments, and things like this. So, and lastly, for pros of leasing, it's cheaper again because you don't have to pay all these big bills when it comes to fixing the car. You only have the car for 4 years, 5 years, 3 years. So in the time you have it, if it's a newer car, there's less chances it's going to have any problems or need the brakes fixed here, there, third, fourth time, or the transmission's going to, there's going to be less problems internally. Plus everything's warranty. So you're going to pay less in, fixing the car, repairing the car. You're going to pay less because it's newer, because it's under warranty. So that's another big way that it's cheaper overall for leasing. And so yeah, those are the pros, but let's go to the cons, because we got to weigh out the good and the bad of everything, right? To find the truth. The truth is always in the middle of us. So one of the cons is, this is the biggest thing, is you have to agree on a certain amount of kilometers you're going to drive it. Okay, so when they give you the cost of the car for those 4 years, they have to calculate how many kilometers you're going to put on it in the term of that lease, whether it's 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So what they do is, for example, my car, it's leased, okay, it's 96,000 kilometers that they expect me to put on the car or less. Okay, so when you break that down, that's 24,000 kilometers a year. And so if you go past that, if you go past the agreed amount of kilometers, they're going to charge you per kilometer. It can add up pretty high. So what I'm trying to say is, when you return the car, you're going to have fees to pay most likely, unless you're watching very carefully how many kilometers you're driving. So more times than not, you have to keep track of the kilometers. So you can't drive it as freely as if you finance a car. Okay. And then that's another con is you don't own the car. So, if you customize it, you got to return it back before you give the car back. You have to return it to default. So yeah, it's not your car. That's the biggest, con is it's not your car. That's all. And if you want to keep the car after the end of the lease, because a lot of times they'll ask if you want to finance it afterwards, it's going to cost you more over time. So you really only have the car for a certain amount of time. It's a true rental in that sense. Now let's talk about financing. Okay, what are the pros on financing? So the best thing is it's your car. You own it. So by the time you end up paying the loan in the given years, 4, 5, 6, whatever year, how many years you decide to pay the loan, it's your car when you're done. So you can resell it, right? You can resell it when you're done. And if you take care of it and you keep it up and it's a good car, you can get back the value of the car that you put in. So yeah, you can keep the car, you can run it to the ground, you can do what you want with it. It's your car. Customize it, these sort of things, right? And there's no end of lease charges. So by the time you're done the paying for the car, it's yours. There's no pay this, pay that, you went over this kilometers, blah, blah, blah. No, you can just drive it as much as you want. It's yours. So that's the best part about financing for sure. The cons of financing would be the payments are more expensive. That's the biggest thing, is it's more expensive to finance a car because you have to pay the entire value of the car in that same, let's say around 3 to 6 years, whatever. You have to pay the full price of the car in that time. So it can be, like I said, 50, 60% more per month than leasing. And then the other thing is, after the loan, after your warranty, you have to pay for the repairs. So if anything goes wrong, that's on you. It's your car now. The dealership's like, bye-bye, it's your car. So you kind of have to take that in consideration as well. So let's take into everything into consideration, and let's decide like which one would you do, okay? Because we see that leasing is temporary, financing is forever, okay? You own the car as long as you have it. Leasing's cheaper, financing's more expensive, but there's pros and cons of each. I would say at the end of the day, this is a stat here, is that from a study from Edmunds.com, millennials are more likely to lease vehicles, than older people. And more people are leasing nowadays as people get their licenses and they're buying cars. So leasing is becoming more popular. And, we have a car for a small amount of time, just like many things in life. Our phones, we have our phone, we get a new phone. I think younger people like the variety, as I said, the spice of life. We enjoy that, Like I said, my car is leased, and I'm going to enjoy in a few years having a new car, the new features, everything that comes with the new car. I'm going to enjoy that, okay? So I think leasing is better overall, okay? Because, let's look at the society nowadays. It's 2021. A lot of people are working from home. So if you're not driving a lot per day, if you're not driving a lot per year, why would you finance a car if you're not even driving it a lot? Pay less and return the car when you're done. It's just cheaper. And furthermore, even when we start traveling and going on road trips, because I would love to go on a road trip and I plan on it. I've been on road trips before. It's better to have a road trip in a rented car, in my opinion. It's not your car. It's going to be cheaper. All you got to do is pay gas. And so, yeah, I would definitely suggest anytime you go on a road trip, rent a car anyways. Whether your car is leased or financed, blah, 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 whatever. I would just say rent a car. So really, we're driving less, we're commuting more, we're working from home more, and traveling with your own car, just rent a car. So overall, I think leasing's better. I would say to finance a car if you have a far commute or you drive a lot. Like let's say you do Uber Eats or skip the dishes or something. So if your car is part of your job and you're driving a lot of kilometers per day, you'd have to finance a car. For example, anyone who does driving instructing and, does lessons and stuff, they would need their car financed for sure because they don't want to worry about how many kilometers they're putting on it per day. Also, if you are really good at fixing cars, so you know how to fix a car, how to do the brakes, how to do the oil, how to do the tires, all these things, transmission, suspension, if you can fix a car from top to bottom, inside to out, you might want to finance because you can pay for parts, do the service yourself. The entire time you have the car, you're taking care of it. So when it's time to, sell the car to somebody, you're more likely to have taken care of it because you know how to take care of cars. So if you're a car person and you see yourself having this car for a long time, finance it for sure. Especially if you're going to be driving it a lot more frequently than people who just commute to and from work, right? So last, I'll talk about my perspective. I have a leased car. Okay, it's a Honda Accord. Really nice car. It's sport. I love it because I have the eco mode and sport mode, so I can hug a tree or race somebody. Just kidding. Don't race. But yeah, I like how it's got both sides. And it's a 2019, so I got it leased in 2019, late 2019. I have 2 more years left on the lease, and I'm enjoying that it's cheaper payments. I'm enjoying, I don't drive far, and with the pandemic and everything, we don't drive as much. So I'm glad I got a lease because I'm not driving it as much as I thought I'd have to worry about. So that makes sense for me. I've enjoyed that, and I'm not really big at like fixing cars and stuff. I'm not that good at that. So when I do, brakes and stuff like this, suspension, when those times come, I'm going to be less inclined to do it myself if I do. So for me, I found leasing to be better. I've had 2 cars previously. If you saw my most recent post, you'll know the first one I got, 16 or something like that. It was from my grandparents, a Toyota Solara, 1999, beige, 2-door. It was a dope car, and it was handed to me at 200,000 plus kilometers on it. So it didn't last too long, unfortunately, because some problems happened with the car. But your first car should not be the nicest car. You have to get used to what it's like to own a car. So if it's your first time ever getting a car, I would definitely try to buy a used car. Okay, you can pay a person, you can buy from a dealership, finance, but get a used car. I had one of my friends suggest is try to just pay for the car outright and own it, so you don't have to pay for payments and stuff like this. Because if you have to make payments and you miss a payment, you don't want to miss a payment. So if your income is not going to be stable, if you're not going to be able to make those payments, don't lease, don't finance, buy a used car and just get the feel of what it's like to have a car, to make payments on repairs and gas and insurance. Cars just eat your money. I want you to know that. Whether you have a nice Maserati or a broken down Toyota, you'll get to your destination the same time. So it doesn't matter what car you have if you can't afford it. So yeah, that would be my suggestion. My second car was another Toyota. It was a Camry Sports Edition, or SE, whatever that means, 2003. Gray. Again, it was a really nice car, and it was handed to me again. So my first 2 cars were paid off. I didn't have to pay anything on them, so I just got used to what it's like owning a car. And that's what I would suggest, like I'm saying to you guys. Just feel out what it's like having a car before you go in and lease or finance, unless you have a job, a stable income. My car now, like I said, is leased, and I'm enjoying that so much. I am. So I wanted to give you a little bit of car history for myself. I want to talk about leasing and financing, the differences, pros and cons. So I hope by now you've learned something, or you have my perspective and it influence you when you go to get your next car or your first car. So let me know in the comments, message me, DM me, let me know about your car history, what you're doing with cars, if you're going to get a new one anytime. Let's have a conversation. I'd love to talk to you guys. So, okay, we got another podcast coming next Friday. It's a feature Friday to end the month. And then April 1st is the release of my book, How to Vibe Out, an ebook. Man, I'm so excited if you guys get it. I'm so excited. You're going to love the book. So stay tuned for my Instagram. I'm going to drop some previews, talk about the book, price points. If you want a discount, I hope you know how already. The link is in the description to get a discount on my book. Okay, 25 to 50%. So you're going to want the discount if you're going to want the book. That just makes sense. Join the Patreon to get a discount. And on the Patreon, I have all different types of exclusive offers, this and that, previews. There's just so much on the Patreon. It's just a community that means so much to me. So if you're on the Patreon, I appreciate you. If you're thinking of joining, it's a very small investment on your part. that goes a long way for me and the future of vibing out here. So think about that, and thank you for being here. I'll see you guys next episode, okay? This has been Vibing Out with Texony. I'm your host, Texony, aka Mr. WorldVibe, and I'm signing out. Peace, guys.